Back to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a really fascinating journey. Someone who uh, moved right from the heart of shaping a country's laws
Hmm.
to then writing blueprints for its future, but from thousands of miles away. It's this shift,
Right.
from insider rulemaker to, well, outside thinker.
And that tension, that specific intellectual journey, that's really the focus of our deep dive today.
Right.
We're digging into the source material on Habtamu Nini Abino,
Right.
trying to track his past from being a key constitutional figure in Ethiopia to his role now as a prominent public intellectual, and actually a cultural leader, too, up in Canada.
Okay, so to really grasp the kind of constitutional commitment he developed, we should probably start at the beginning. His early life.
Definitely. The context matters.
He was born in Arsinajela, Ethiopia. And the sources mention he came from a very devout Seventh-day Adventist family. Faith, education, service, these were central.
Yeah, and there's also that interesting little detail the sources bring up about the Nini family's ancestry.
Oh yeah, tracing back through Yemen. And even further, hinting at these really old migration paths into the Horn of Africa. Quite something.
It is. And that background, growing up where he did, when he did, well, it placed him right in the middle of Ethiopia's biggest challenges.
You mean growing up during the Derg regime?
Exactly. The turbulence, the socialist military rule,
Mm.
witnessing that kind of highly centralized power and the conflict it caused, that was formative.
So that's where the belief in constitutionalism comes from.
It seems so. A lifelong belief, really, in meeting that balance, federalism, social justice. He saw firsthand what happens when you ignore the rights of different nations and nationalities within a state. The tension.
Okay, so he needed the tools to address that, educationally, professionally.
Right. So he got his LLB, his law degree, in Ethiopia. And then later, crucially, an MBA from the Open University in the UK.
Interesting combo, law and strategic management.
Yeah, it set him up perfectly for navigating those institutional corridors of power back in Ethiopia.
Yeah. Which leads us to his biggest role there, right? The House of Federation.
His most prominent one, absolutely. Secretary General and head of Secretary to the House of Federation, the Hof. That's Ethiopia's upper House of Parliament.
And he was there for a good chunk of time, January 2006 to February 2013, a critical period.
Very critical. He was running the administrative machinery of the Hof.
So let's unpack that a bit. What exactly does the Hof do? The sources call it the guardian of Ethiopia's delicate balance between unity and diversity.
That's a good way to put it. Under his leadership as Secretary General, the Secretariat was handling constitutional interpretation, managing relationships between the federal government and the regions.
Intergovernmental relations.
Yeah, exactly. And, maybe most importantly, fiscal federalism.
Okay, fiscal federalism. Sounds technical, but I guess it's about the money, right? Who gets what?
Precisely. It's about dividing up the power to raise revenue and the responsibility for spending between the central government and the regional states.
And if that's not balanced?
The whole structure can wobble or even collapse. His job was administering the system meant to share resources equitably. And, that's often the deepest fault line in any federation. Money.
And his time there coincided with huge debates, especially around Article 39 of the Constitution.
Big one. Yeah. The clause that guarantees ethnic self-determination up to and including the right to secession.
Right. So here's the aha moment for me. How do you run the administration for a body whose constitution technically allows parts of the country to leave? That seems inherently unstable.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And what the sources show is that Abino wasn't actually arguing to get rid of Article 39. He defended the principle itself, the right to self-determination.
Okay, so he wasn't trying to centralize things by removing it.
No. Instead, he's trying to refine how it worked. The tension he was managing was defending that ultimate right while also pushing for national cohesion.
How do you refine the right to leave?
By focusing on process, arguing that constitutional fidelity, sticking to the rules, meant you had to exhaust all the federal dispute resolution mechanisms first. You had to try everything else before secession could even be considered a politically viable option.
Ah, so building up the system's ability to solve problems internally.
Exactly. Building institutional trust, making that final legal escape hatch feel unnecessary, ideally obsolete.
That's a really subtle but significant approach. Not just managing the existence of this nuclear option,
Yeah.
but trying to build the safeguards to prevent anyone pushing the button.
Well put.
Right.
And his expertise wasn't just recognized internally. He was out there representing Ethiopia internationally.
Right. The sources mention places like the Interparliamentary Union, ASGP, between 2010, 2012, roughly.
Yeah, presenting papers, talking about democratic culture, building institutional capacity, specifically for emerging federations like Ethiopia,
Yeah.
sharing those lessons.
And his administrative experience wasn't just in the parliamentary or legal sphere, was it? The sources mention economics, too.
That's right. It shows a broader vision of governance. We see it in his earlier work heading up capacity building in Dire Dawa's city government.
Okay.
But also, and this is quite telling, as board chairperson for Harar Brewery and Dire Dawa Cement Factory.
Harar Brewery and Dire Dawa Cement, why are those highlighted? Why cornerstone industries?
Well, think about it. Beer means significant excise tax revenue for the state. Cement is fundamental for infrastructure for national development projects.
Right, basic building blocks.
Exactly. Holding those board positions suggests his vision wasn't just abstract legal theory. He understood that making federalism work meant connecting it to the economy, ensuring governance translated into, practical economic policy, maybe even things like local ownership, integrating different groups into managing these key assets.
Okay, so he's deeply embedded in the Ethiopian system,
Right.
legally, administratively, economically. And then comes the big shift.
The pivot. Political changes happen in Ethiopia, the climate shifts, and he relocates to Ottawa, Canada.
That's a huge transition. Going from running a national parliamentary secretariat to essentially starting over in a new country, he eventually became a Canadian citizen too. It takes real adaptability.
It does. But it wasn't just an end to his Ethiopian career. It was the start of an intellectual transformation.
How so?
Well, in Ethiopia, he was an implementer. He had to work within the existing rules, even the ones he might have seen flaws in. Moving to Canada gave him distance, freedom,
Ah, the freedom to critique.
and to theorize, to turn all that firsthand high-level experience into scholarship, into activism. He could step back, compare Ethiopia's system with others, and really develop his own ideas without the constraints of office. From prescriptive governance to critical theory, you could say.
And that critical theory, that intellectual project now, it's focused on a path forward for Ethiopia.
Entirely. He's advocating for what he calls a second republic of Ethiopia.
A second republic. What does that mean?
It means one explicitly founded on liberal democracy, on genuine federal balance, not just on paper and on the absolute rule of law. A reset, basically.
And his recent publications, they really flesh this out, right? This
Yeah.
is where you really see his current thinking crystallize.
Absolutely. This is the payoff for anyone trying to understand his influence now.
Yeah.
Take his 2023 book, The Second Republic and the Politics of Article 39 in Ethiopia.
Okay, so circling back to Article 39.
Yes. This book is basically the deep theoretical dive into that refinement strategy we talked about, analyzing that core paradox,
Yeah.
ethnic self-determination versus the need for national unity. How do you square that circle?
And then there's the other big 2023 work, Liberal Democracy and the Constitution of 1994, the User's Handbook. I find that title really intriguing. A user's handbook for a constitution that's, what, nearly 30 years old?
It's a very strategic title, I think.
Why a handbook now? Wouldn't the political class know how to use it?
That's the point. It implies maybe the political elites haven't been using it correctly,
Right.
or they've controlled the interpretation. This handbook isn't for them. It's framed as a practical guide for citizens,
Oh.
interpreting the federal structure, civic rights, but through the lens of citizen participation. It's about civic literacy, giving ordinary Ethiopians the tools to understand and claim ownership of their own constitutional framework.
So it's less about legal commentary for lawyers and more about democratizing the Constitution itself, trying to rebuild trust from the ground up.
Exactly. It's a democratization tool. And his thinking isn't just dry legal stuff. The sources mention he draws on different philosophical traditions too.
Like Hegelian dialectics. How does 19th century German philosophy help with Ethiopian federalism? Seems like a stretch.
Well, briefly, Hegelian dialectics is about progress through conflict, right? Thesis meets antithesis, creates synthesis, a higher truth.
Okay.
So in Ethiopia's context, thesis centralized power. Antithesis, radical ethnic self-determination, like Article 39 potentially allows. Abino seems to use this framework to argue this synthesis, the necessary higher truth, must be equitable pluralism.
Equitable pluralism,
Meaning a constitutional setup that genuinely finds a balance. It reconciles the center's needs with regional autonomy, respects diversity, but prevents either extreme from tearing the state apart. That's the synthesis he's aiming for.
Got it. Okay. So, books, theory, but he's also active on the ground in Canada, right, with the diaspora community.
Very much so. He founded and runs the Oromo Heritage Association of Canada, OHE.
What's the goal there?
It's a nonprofit promoting Oromo culture, heritage, and also civic education. It connects directly back to his academic work on equitable pluralism.
How so?
Because cultural preservation, understanding your heritage, that's a key part of self-determination for any group. It needs institutional support.
And OHAC provides that.
It tries to. The sources mention practical examples, like organizing big cultural festivals.
Mm.
Specifically, Iricha Ottawa 2025, planned with the City of Ottawa's partnership.
So, bringing Oromo cultural celebration into the Canadian civic space.
Right. It's about cultural revival, keeping traditions alive across generations in the diaspora and integrating that with Canadian multiculturalism, intergenerational empowerment.
And beyond the community work, he's still a public voice, isn't he? Online, commenting on current affairs.
Yeah. Active on social media, X, formerly Twitter, at Abino, verified account. The key thing isn't the follower count, though. It's that his commentary is seen as having this sharp legal perspective.
Really sensitive topics, too.
High-stakes stuff, Eritrea-Ethiopia relations, Red Sea geopolitics, broader Horn of Africa integration. He's offering analysis on the same complex system he used to help manage from the inside.
That gives him a unique perspective, for sure.
And the sources note that underpinning all this is his faith. He often signs off posts with, "I trust in God." And that civic belief seems to extend to his family, too, supporting his daughter, Nini, in her work with global youth peace initiatives.
It's also interesting that he's active civically in Canada, member of the Lorry Club, involved in the local Liberal Party Association.
Right. And that's not just trivia. It suggests he's not just an observer. He's participating in a working federal democracy, maybe learning, seeing mechanisms firsthand that could potentially be adapted or offer lessons for the Ethiopian context he writes about.
He really is breaking worlds, then, institutionally, intellectually, geographically.
Absolutely. His whole path, from that high office in Addis Ababa to his scholarly work in Ottawa, you could see it as offering a kind of moral roadmap for Ethiopia's future.
How so? A roadmap.
By consistently urging a move away from politics based on force or coercion towards dialogue, fairness, equity, and really sticking to the Constitution, fidelity to the agreed rules.
So, for you, the listener, what's the core message here? It seems Habtamu Nini Abino's life and work suggests that maybe reconciliation, even in deeply divided societies, is possible if you ground it in fundamental principles.
Yes, and that the answer to ethnic tensions isn't to suppress identities, but maybe the opposite. To ensure the Constitution truly protects and empowers them, giving everyone ownership of the system.
And that final takeaway from his work really resonates, that call for, what was it? Unity, not in uniformity.
But in equitable pluralism and democratic faith. That's the key phrase.
Explain that distinction again. Uniformity versus equitable pluralism.
Uniformity says everyone has to be the same, fit one mold. That clearly hasn't worked in Ethiopia or many diverse states. Equitable pluralism says the system itself must acknowledge, respect, and even support fundamental differences. But everyone agrees to live together under one constitutional roof, built on fairness and democratic principles.
That's the synthesis he's proposing, the way to balance diversity and unity.
Exactly.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to chew on after this deep dive. We've talked a lot about the Ethiopian context, obviously, but many young, diverse federations around the world face similar challenges: managing diversity, building trust, making constitutions work in practice.
It's a widespread issue.
So how might Abino's Practical User's Handbook approach this idea of interpreting complex constitutional rules specifically through the lens of everyday governance and empowering citizen participation? How might that idea be applied in other fragile political situations outside of Ethiopia? Something to think about.